In our last lecture, we talked about the different security categories, and today we're going to talk about the security types associated with that. Now, it is important to understand that a category can have different types of security controls implemented within it. However, most CompTIA questions are going to separate those across from each other, and we'll kind of go through that at the end of the lecture. So let's jump right into it. The first one, of course, preventive controls. What is the preventive control? Well, very bluntly, it's anything that prevents an action from occurring. Preventive controls are this idea that if I can do something now, can I prevent something from occurring in the future? Usually a vulnerability, maybe an attack, anything that is preventive in nature. This would be fences, for instance, which would also be a physical control, would also be considered to be a preventive control. We're preventing somebody from gaining access into our parking lot, into our building, into our space. That would be a preventive type of control. We see this often associated with intrusion prevention systems, strong authentication, multi-factor, or even two-factor authentication, and of course, locks, gates, and so on and so forth. Just remember, when you're thinking about preventive controls, we want to prevent an action from occurring. Remember that, you're good to go. Next one, of course, is a deterrent control. Deterrent controls are more of a suggestion. I want you to think about this in your real life. As you're going through and you see that stop sign, it implies that you should stop. And if you don't stop, you will then break the law. And if a cop is watching, then you'll get a ticket. But if there's nobody around and it's in a long country road, does it really stop you from running the stop sign? No, it's just the stop sign. It's just there to deter an action. And that's where deterrent controls come into play. Deterrent controls are suggestions to make you think twice about enacting an illegal way. We can do this via signs, placards. Think about a security camera often is considered to be a deterrent control. I remember when I was working for one company, we had a problem with copper theft. And so one of the things that we did is we went on Amazon and we purchased a ton of fake cameras. Now, these were very obviously fake cameras if you looked at it close enough. But if you plugged in a couple AA batteries, it had a red flashing light. So one of the things that we did is we mounted this camera very high on the building to look down on the area that we were experiencing all these copper thefts at with the blinking LED light. Then we put a sign up that said, "Warning, you are being video recorded." Our copper theft dropped by nearly 50% overnight just by employing these fake cameras. This is a deterrent control. It deters an illegal action. It deters an action from occurring that could cause harm into our system. That's all it is. It's a deterrent. If someone broke the law and stole our copper, could we stop them with the camera? No, it's not even going to prevent them, but it deters that action from occurring. And that's where deterrent control comes into play. Next, we have detective controls. Detective controls really kind of put that private eye spin on what you're trying to accomplish. I want to detect after something has already occurred. This would be logs, maybe an audit. Something has occurred within my network or something has occurred within my infrastructure, and I need to figure out what happened after the fact. It is never before the fact. It is always after. And this is where a detective control comes into play. We know X occurred. How did X occur? Well, let's investigate. Let's detect what's going on. This is where detective control comes into play. Then we have a corrective control. Corrective controls, like detective controls, are after the fact. But instead of investigating and figuring out what happened, we're going to correct the action. So if we had a vulnerability that was taken advantage of and I exploited, then we need to correct that problem. How do we correct that problem? Sometimes it's patching, sometimes it's adding additional software, sometimes it's adding additional security features. Whatever it is, we're going to correct the action. It can never occur before the action, before the problem occurred. It's always after the problem occurred. And this is where corrective action comes into play. It could be an incident response. It could be a malware removal. Anything like this is considered to be, hey, this occurred, let's fix it. That's a corrective action. Remember, never beforehand. If it's beforehand, it's a preventive control. Then we have a compensating control. Compensating controls are often confused with corrective controls. And this is really where the place comes into play, right? So with a corrective control, we know that we had an incident. We know we had some issue within our network and we need to fix it. That makes it a corrective control. But what if we see a problem that our normal way of thinking does not work? For instance, maybe I have a legacy system, and within this legacy system, I have new security features that I want to employ, but because it's a legacy system, it can't handle it. We still have the standard that we need to meet, even though it's a legacy system. So what do I do in order to bring it up to the same or greater security functionality of that same issue without using that same or primary objective, that primary technology. Let's give this a real life example because I feel like I'm kind of talking around this a little bit, okay? Let's say that I've got a Windows, 97 or Windows 95, Windows 98, whatever you want to call it, right? I've got this old legacy Windows system and it has proprietary software on it that I'm still using. It's still providing me profitability within my organization, but it doesn't allow me to do the latest and greatest security functionalities on it. Our standard is to do this. It's a standard that Windows 10, Windows 11 has built into it, but we can't do it on a Windows 95 system, so how do I correct that issue? Well, I don't correct it at all. I use compensating controls. I use a technology or another feature that brings that Windows 95 system to meet or exceed the issue or the security that in place that our other systems can already come into play. This is compensating controls. Compensating controls bring the security of a feature, of a system, up to meet or exceed the security features that we need for our systems across the board. That's a compensating control. I hope that made sense. All right, then we have directive controls. Directive controls are a subset, usually, of a managerial control. I'm directing you to do something. I direct you to fill out or follow this policy. I direct you to create a policy, right? I direct you to attend training. I'm directing you to do something. This is an administrative action that your manager may direct you to do something. This is often confused with managerial control. So what is the difference? Managerial control is a policy. Directive control, I'm directing you to physically do something. Okay? So a directive control is I'm telling you to do something. I'm telling you to carry out an action or I'm carrying out a policy. But a administrative or managerial control is a certain policy or procedure that underlies what I want all employees to do. So directive could be something individualized or departmentalized, meaning I'm regulating or telling the entire department to do something. A managerial control will be creating a policy that tells you to do something. A little bit of a difference there, but understand that a directive control is literally telling you to do something. It's directing you towards a course of action. That is a directive control. That's a little bit different than a managerial control. All right, so what type of questions can I expect to see in my Security Plus exam when it comes to all these different types of control types and control categories? Well, to be honest, I would expect some trickery. CompTIA loves to trick students in the different perspectives to make sure that you understand the legitimate differences between them. And they often employ both categories and the security controls and intermingle them together. So what I would fully expect to understand or to prepare for would be a question that confers both a managerial or a directive control inside the same question. Now, great news, I've got an entire lecture associated with literally domain 1.1, which we're going to get into in a little bit, but that type of question will be answered in there. I firmly believe that you should watch that. One of my biggest things that I often tell students is, if you really want to pass your Security Plus, practice exam, practice exam, practice exam, practice exams. Take practice exams. Not the same one over and over again, different ones. Understand what you did wrong. And that's really how you pass Security Plus in my mind. Follow the lectures and then do the practice exams and you'll be good to go. We'll see you next time.